Hey everyone, welcome to Architecture Today. Something we take it for granted when we're in our workspace or even where we live. We don't always look at the architecture. We appreciate it and how it's well designed, but we never think about who's actually doing it. We're going to talk today with a well-known architect in the New York City area. His name is John Riggio, and he joins us today. John, welcome. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Steve?
Very well, very well. I want to dig into what's hot now in terms of architecture. Is it contemporary styles? Is that still something big now?
Yes. Everything is contemporary styles. I think, with the exception to any building department requirements, all the styles we're working on is pretty much contemporary. I have a few different kinds of contemporary styles depending on what neighborhood and what the houses look like. And I think I showed them on my webpage. I have a number of examples there where it shows a lot of contemporary styles. And also the materials and the methods of building the house is also contemporary too. We're using a lot of new technologies, things like superior walls. We're going with thin stone and all kinds of newer materials, going with the drive-it materials, and a lot of things like with the composite wood in a lot of locations, particularly on decks and things like that, porches. So everything is really the newest technology, also the most energy efficient technology, and that's really what's going on with the houses.
Let's take a look at that. Now, there's a house that we have that you designed from the bottom up. It's that gray house, which I love this style. You know, sometimes Victorian style is kind of nice, but this style just always looks nice. It pops. It just looks very clean. And is that something that's big today? And is that what people are asking for when they ask you to design a house?
Yes, yes. I would propose different design styles to them, and a lot of these we're going with a drive-it. We're going with some thin stone, things like that. We still are using also brick. A lot of houses still have a brick. They're either a full-size brick or a thin brick.
Now, when we
And
talk brick, are we talking about traditional, the red brick that we're used to, or are we talking about different stone on the face of the house?
some of them might have a newer style. They might have like a white stone brick, things like that. They would have a variety of different styles. Depending on what the location is, how the style of the house looks, we would adjust the materials on the house.
When you mention superior walls, that's like one of the newest innovations. We have a picture of that as the house is being constructed, and super cool. Now, what exactly is a superior wall?
Okay, superior wall is a sandwich of concrete, metal, and insulation, and they make this in a factory based on my drawings. They take it, make their own shop drawing. They make the forms for it, and then they take these large pieces and they put them on a truck and they bring them to the site and they install them with a crane. And that is the newest style right now. And it is very cost saving, and they are getting a lot out of it as far as the insulation and things like that.
When we say superior wall, I want to better understand it. Is it the foundation being built up, or are we actually talking about the walls of the house?
This is just the foundation. The walls
Okay.
of the house is still being constructed in the traditional um, wood frame construction.
With studs, wood, plywood, and sheetrock, just as it always has
Yes,
been.
yes. A lot of these larger houses, the walls are 2 by 6 instead of 2 by 4. Because since the ceiling heights might go up to 10 feet, the wall thicknesses we have to use 2 by 6 wood framing. So there's some of them are very large.
What's your favorite style?
Well, I've been going with usually designing a contemporary style that's coming out to either like a contemporary of a traditional house, contemporary of colonial house. So that's really what the styles I'm using.
When we talk about the different styles, what about if somebody wants to renovate their house? What's the process for that? Let's say, you have an older brick house and you want to go for maybe something more contemporary or maybe Victorian, whatever it might be. Is there a lot involved in doing that? Do you have to kind of pare it all down from the beginning and work your way up, or is it easy to design something like that?
Yes, I always work on those kind of houses where we're taking an existing house, might have brick on it, and we're completely gutting it out, changing the
Is it
style,
truly
adding
gutted,
onto
or
it.
you just take it right down to the studs or the plywood and then work from there?
Yes, everything is removed right down to the 2 by 4 walls that are
Wow.
existing. Sometimes you might bring the whole house right down to the existing foundation and build the whole thing over, new floors, new walls. This is a current trend going on. People can save some money keeping the foundations, and the whole finished product looks like a new house and has all new electrical systems, mechanical, everything is brand new.
I've often heard that when you're going to renovate a house, and I did this way back in the day, that if you keep the existing footprint of the foundation, typically your taxes won't be as high as if you build out the footprint where you add a room. Is that true?
Yes, that's the number one consideration with leaving the foundations. There's a few issues. One of them is a tax issue. Another one is getting additional permits. That when you apply for all the additional permits and have to get all the different specialties as far as the different constructions concerned, sometimes there are some stops involved. A lot of people don't want to take the chances on that. They by keeping the existing foundations, the old tax rate is going to stay in place longer. So they're getting an edge on that too. It's going to take them a number of years before the tax rate is going to increase. They're going to increase the value of the house. So a lot of people are going ahead with keeping their old foundation walls and just building over it. I think overall, as far as the construction is concerned, if you don't mind going for the extra permits and things, it is more streamlined to just go ahead with a brand new house from that kind of perspective. Just remove the old foundations. You could also correct a lot of problems on the job site. If there's anything wrong with the job site, old oil tanks in the ground, things like that, you can clean up the whole place. Any problems with water drainage? Sometimes there's existing problems where the water was draining onto the property, maybe going to the basement. So that gives you an opportunity to regrade the property too. So if you can really go big with the extra changes, you would probably like the end product better. I think the as far as the taxes and costs of construction, eventually I think the tax rate is going to catch up on the house eventually. On a new house, that you know you're gonna pay more right away. I mean, they're gonna give you the higher tax rate sooner than doing just the major alteration. I think on the picture you had shown there, on that particular property, there were some issues of the ground sloping from the right side of the property to the left, and by having the complete new house on that, we were able to correct a lot of them. We put a whole water retaining wall and different kinds of things in the property, upgraded all the electrical services under the ground, and things like that. So all those things corrected some problems they had in the past, and you can get more from doing that. That is, you get more out of your project.
I want to get technical. I have an architect, so I can ask him anything. So this is what I'm really curious. Let's say you keep the foundation, but
Yes.
you want to add some rooms. So now you're going to build up from that. How do you know that the foundation can support that? The load-bearing walls and all of that. How do you calculate that? How are you mindful of that?
That's from building standards. That is from years of experience, starting in architect school and learning from experience, reading the building code of what size foundations they have, what the foundation looks like, if it has a footing. And from things like that, we would usually inspect the site. I would inspect the site. I would look at the different things like the survey and the existing house, measuring the house, things like that. And from that, I can then determine what kind of structure is required, if any repairs are necessary too before the structure is constructed. And then from there, then they could then build a house to code and within the specifications we have.
What's really big now is 3D drawings, and I know that you do that as well. At what point do you present those 3D drawings? Is it when everything is almost ready to be actually constructed, or is it sometime before that? What's the process?
Usually the 3D drawing is after we go through the design process. A lot of times the homeowners would like to see what the finished product is going to look like in case they have last minute changes. So that's when we usually would make the 3D drawing. And I think one drawing that's on my webpage is also a walkthrough of the interior of the house. And that is to give the owners an idea of how all the different spaces are going to look like. I think one particular house I have shown on my webpage has a double height space on the entrance and a double height family room. And so the owners are able to really look at that and get an idea if everything is going to look as how we envision it on our design plans, and from there they could make any last minute changes. They could also make the last minute changes on any type of materials. Looking at the 3D drawing, they might want to make changes in either the texture of the materials, the maybe the colors of the materials, things like that.
It's super cool because you also put furniture in. Just as a placeholder, but to see what it looks like, what your house is going to look like, let's say the bedroom or the living room, to have that furniture placed in, it kind of gives you almost like a real feel of you walking through your house. When you work with somebody, do they know what they want every single time, or do you have to work with them? Do you say, hey, you know what, we could do a vaulted ceiling, we could add this to your house? How does that usually work with the people that come to you to get designs?
I think people usually have an idea. A lot of times they would reference another project I worked on, or I would show them some jobs that I have, and they might point out one thing that they were interested in, what they like, how it looks. And from there, I would then make design drawings. And usually from that, I would use my experience and the knowledge of the building code to make their plans work for them. They would work good and bring everything to the current styles also, that they are also going to look in a contemporary style as far as the outside of the house, and even the inside spaces of the house is going to work to what most people are using. And even things like the kitchen layout, sometimes the design of the kitchen layout changes over the years. It slightly changes. You might go from an island that is freestanding to a L-shaped kitchen or U-shaped kitchen, things like that. So there's current trends that slightly change over time.
Open concept, is that still something that's big?
Yes, it is. Everyone would like to open up the living room walls or walls between the kitchen and the dining room and the family room, have one open space. Everyone is still going with that idea. And
Been around for a long time. I'm thinking, I had it in a house that I bought, probably 2014 somewhere, and it seemed like it was still very popular. But it really does make sense because you spend so much time in the kitchen. You want to make that the gathering spot as well. A lot of times people don't even go to the living room. They just hang out in the kitchen, especially during holidays.
yes, I think there's the newest trend is people are going for more of a covered porch.
I'm sorry, what?
They are really interested in a covered porch, either covered in the front of the house or covered in the rear of the house.
Oh, I love that
covered
idea
deck.
because it's almost wasted. It's almost like it's just, you pass by a house, yeah, it's a nice porch, looks really cute, but what do you use it for? Somebody walks up to the front door and that's it. So you're talking about using that porch as a living space.
Yeah, I think, well, for a while there were different trends. A lot of people going for the sunrooms. They have four-season sunrooms,
Right.
and they're going for the like sunrooms that are wood, a screened-in covered porch. And right now they're just putting a roof over the porch. Just put a simple roof, no screens, no windows, no skylights. This is the new trend that's been going on, and I've been working on a lot of these type of jobs.
I always wonder, you mentioned sunrooms. If you want something more of a four season, why have a sunroom? Just make that another room. This is a question. I'm not sure why people do
Well,
that.
Four Season is really a brand name.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a company, but is it really?
Yes, I think yes. I think originally with those type of sunrooms was really the issue of heating the room, and the sunrooms that were enclosed with glass, you really cannot heat them. They're really just an exterior room where you have to open the windows, let air in. So a lot of people, that trend sort of went away for a while, and most people are just going with like open room, and and presently they're going with adding a roof over those type of
Right.
spaces.
And yeah, to your point with the R factor and the insulation, if you're going to have a sunroom, you can't really heat it because that glass is not going to prevent the cold from coming in because there's a lot of glass in that sunroom.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So we're gonna change gears for just a second here. This is architecture today, but I come to learn as I talk to John that not only is he an accomplished architect in the New York City area, this guy was a tennis pro back in the day. Like literally when you were in your barely even 20, playing with some of the biggest players on the planet, and their names still hold true to the day. Like these are big names. We're talking like Yvonne Lendl, Boris Becker. How did that all begin before you even started on the path as an architect? How did that begin for you?
Well, that really started at a young age when I was 9 years old. And it all started when my mother bought me this Prince racket that I really wanted. And then I went to play with it, and then I bent the racket. So when she brought it back to the pro shop, the pro shop owner, Patrick Mulroney, he knew right away what the situation was and that I could really make it as a pro tennis player. And
I just want to interject in
I
here
became
that
sponsored at that point.
people don't break regular people. I play tennis occasionally. There's no way I'm ever going to break a racket. I mean, that takes a lot of force, a lot of power, and you've broken rackets that are wood, metal, just
Yes.
whacking the ball.
Any tennis racket, even broke the tennis ball. So from that ability, the pro shop and Patrick Mulroney was able to really tell that I can play excellent tennis, and I was sponsored from that point on. And I was even given a salary for each year I was sponsored, and it only took a few years for me to really start playing. And I was able to get into to playing, first starting my tennis club, and then my tennis coach, Robert Cambria, really noticed my tennis playing, and he was able to give me a chance at making the pros, and I made the pros right away, going to right through the ITF to the ATP, and so when I started playing, I think I was young, maybe only 13. I was able to increase my salary by playing those matches,
Wow.
and moved up to play junior tennis, and then played when I turned 18, played adult tennis, and from there continued to play on. Where I was so good, I was able to hold my court all those years. And from having my own court, it developed where I had my own court in Jericho. Then it developed where I had my own court on Court 33 at the U.S. Tennis Center in Flushing, to Alley Pond in Queens, New York. I had my own tennis bubble there. And from there, it went to Sutton East. And then after Sutton East, I haven't talked about this, but my contract was bought over. It was eventually bought over because there was a whole contract issue I could talk about in a few minutes. But it was bought over by Ross Perot and his sport organization. And then from that, I continued to play, received a new player name, named Scipio, and I was greatly advertised all the way in places like the Philippines, Indonesia, China, Japan, and a lot of people know me over there. They know I'm a player there, and then when I had vacation over there, it was really excellent to meet a lot of people who who knew how I was there and had my tennis playing card and things like that. So it was very good. So my playing continued on after Sutton East. I haven't discussed that before, but I think with the tennis, one issue I didn't discuss at all, which is very interesting, is the whole time when I signed my contract, is that they issued a dollar value to the contract. I think it started off maybe like $500,000. And what was very interesting about the contract is that as I progressed and moved from one contract owner to the next, my contract kept getting bought and sold for a lot of money. So money was being transacted. It was maybe going from 500,000 to a million to 5 million. It was bought for 5 million at Sutton East.
And how
So
old were you at this time?
Yes, I was. That was. I was about 19 years old,
Like
and
unbelievable. And we have to remember here, we're talking the 80s. So, a million in the 80s now is probably, and that's we're talking a million there. It's got to be like 5 million, in
yes.
dollar value back then. That was a lot of money. Unbelievable.
So at Sutton East, it was 5 million. They bought my contract over, and then it was bought during Sutton. It was bought over. There was a price about 15 million. It had changed hands there, and then also at that point, my contract, as far as my sponsor, had expanded. They issued shares and things like that. A lot of that business, I'm not a part of any of it, but they did let me know the basics of it. And then when there was the work stoppage, there was different things with lawyers and things like that. And then the next step, what happened was uh, from the stoppage, instead of going to court completely and solving the problem, it ended up turning into a another bid on my contract. So my contract went from maybe 15 million or more getting bought and sold to a price of 25 million, and the bid price of 25 million was there. So what happened? It was bid around the USA. They found large sport organizations that were like big sport teams, and then it was then totally bought over by Ross Perot Company for more than 25 million. So there was a dollar exchange of more than $26.5 million.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Wasn't there a connection with you and the Vanderbilt family, Gloria Vanderbilt? I'm trying to remember. I thought I had
Yes.
read that somewhere.
Yes, that was at Sutton East. And I think the Vanderbilt, Gloria Vanderbilt did excellent work. There were some things that happened personally that were distracting as far as my playing happened. She had some personal problems that took place, and but she did excellent work, and that boiled over into my contract getting bought over. And I think what happened was there was another issue with the contract was this whole thing with lawyers. And the very first court case I initiated myself. I initiated the very first court case when there was a stoppage in '87, and I told the whole story before about the Australian team leaving the U.S. because of things like that, and I ended up bringing them to court on my own. So I brought the tennis center to court on my own to find out what the problem is, and I was successful for the a decision by the court there. I was still young enough; it was really like in a juvenile court, and so that worked very good. So the playing continued on very quickly, and I was back on playing with Ali Pond and everything. And the next court case came at Sutton. So from that time, from Ali Pond to Sutton, there wasn't any court case. They weren't stopping me. There was continuing playing, and all I had to do was stop back every once in a while at the tennis center. And so what happened at that point was they hired a lawyer because the rating at the tennis center there at Sutton East was stopped for some reason. So to solve the problem, they were going to go to court, and they hired Rudolph Giuliani's office. And what happened was, I think there was one problem was they didn't really understand what was happening. I think the word wasn't being passed across to the new lawyers. And what they did was they took Courtney Pulitzer, who was my female counterpart, and they had her go to court with the lawyers, and they forgot me at home. They forgot to have me even go to the lawyer office. They forgot to have me appear in court, and then the judge knew right away. He says, "Where's John?" You know,
This is all about John. Why
yeah, because
shouldn't the guy be
they already
here?
knew me because I brought them to court years ago on my own. And I think that whole thing, they really did not know what happened. So the whole thing became a failure. It fell through. And I think just by chance, I was given a playing extension time anyway. So I was given some playing extension time. Then the next event took place was after the next stoppage point was I was given some name of a lawyer to call, and I called over, and it was the law office of Hillary Clinton. That's the same Hillary Clinton in politics
Wow.
with her husband, Bill Clinton. And I called over to them, and I made friends with them. They're very nice. I talked to Hillary over like 3 months' time, and staying for them. And what happened is they initially sent some papers over to the court for me, and it turns out they needed a full-blown case. But I think what happened is since there was still some problems over there from on Sutton East, the sponsors, um, because they had personal grief, is what happened is they didn't know what to do. So what happened was to solve the problem, Hillary, who did excellent work, she took my case and she made a bid throughout the whole 50 states of the USA. And the bidding price coming from my sponsor, Sutton East, was $25 million.
And this is bidding on your contract.
Yes.
Wow.
So they started the bidding at 25 million, and from calling them back and forth, I, first they were to get sponsors for 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, 25 million, and then they said, okay, the 25 million, the sponsors, the previous sponsors did not want to sell. They did not want to sell for 25 million. They wanted more money. So they had to get more investors, and it ultimately came to Ross Perot's company, who was able to put the money in. I think the money came in approximately $26.5 million.
Wow. Again, I just have to go back to the fact that this is John. He's an architect now, been for decades. But this all started when he was in his teens, and now we're talking right around early 20s. Now, you mentioned sponsors. Are they giving you things like you always hear of like celebrities getting things like cars and stuff like that. Did anybody ever offer you a car?
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Well, I think I told you about the Mercedes Benz that they bought for me and for me to use for a few months and things like that. And of
But
course,
you couldn't drive it.
yeah. Well, of course, we're doing achieving with tennis and things like that. A lot of times, I was sort of just given an idea of really what kind of things I um, could buy. Like what kind of things I could clothes I could wear and things I could buy. That I was given a Ferrari and things like that. So I could get a nice car on my own also.
Sure, but it wasn't. Did I hear somewhere, read somewhere that you got a Mercedes, but you were under the age of 25, and the stipulation was you needed to be 25 to drive the vehicle, so it just sat there. Like you couldn't do anything with
Unfortunately,
it.
that did happen.
Yeah.
Yes, it sat there, and that is just based on a certain function of how my sponsors were able to provide me with the car. I think it still was a very nice gift. It really showed that I was achieving, that I was
Sure.
able to generate so much money that they were able to buy this car. And even though it sat there, it still helped. It was really very prestigious. And I thought that was really good. And then, so after the contract was bought over for 26.5 million, there was a new name issued. The Ross Perot company did give me a new name of Scipio, and I met them. I had them.
Now, who's Scipio?
That's my new name. My new name is Scipio.
Oh, all right. So like celebrities have names. So you had we went from John Riggio to John Scipio.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super cool. Yeah, and you had other names too, didn't you?
Yes. Yes. So what happens? I met the Perot team, and I played them over at the State University, Westbury, because I knew where the courts were. We played there for a while, and I played with some of their other hopefuls, and I think they were, sort of difficult at first.
To play,
Yeah, because
play.
I'm the star player they just bought for $26.5 million, and they were difficult with me. I played some tennis players they had with me, and I think there was some difficult times they wanted to cheat on me. So then I got some phone calls from my lawyer, got phone calls from my previous sponsor, and I continued to play the matches, they were very impressed with my playing, and so that was a very interesting experience. And so I was playing there with them. I started to play some tennis matches, and what happened is I think the whole thing with the new sponsor, things were a little different. They were telling me some things about how they had a few tennis players, and this whole thing with playing over in Pacific area, things like that. So that was very interesting.
I want to find out of all the prominent players that you were surrounded with, maybe practiced with, or actually did a match with, who is your favorite, or who was the most challenging?
I
Was it Boris Becker, Yvonne
I think
Lendl?
the most challenging was really Stefan Edberg.
Really?
Yes,
Why is that?
the reason is Stefan Edberg. I had met Stefan Edberg when I was playing on my own court in Jericho, and he was coming up, making the number one position, surpassing Brad Witt. So he was really coming up strong, and he was very friendly with me. You know, he always wanted to see that I was getting things, advertisements in the tennis magazine and other types of things like that. But he was an excellent player, and it took me a while to really to move up to finally surpass him in summer '87. But he was a good challenging opponent to play.
And for me, it's kind of a mind blow because I know all these names. Like growing up, I played tennis when I was younger. You know, maybe once a month, not like John over here, but all these names are so prominent, like major sports. These are, you watch ABC Sports. These are the names that they were talking about. So Stefan Edberg, what made him such a challenge? Was it his strategy? Was it the power in his swing? What do you think it was?
Yeah, he was a similar kind of player. And it goes, and then what happened is he played a similar style to myself, and he was a strong player. He had his game together really good, and I think he was someone that yeah, at that time I was able to play him a number of times, and surpassing him in '80 summer '87 was a big achievement. I think that pushed me up into the numbers where I was able to get the one spot and the tennis bubble and things like that. So that was one one thing I remember about him playing, and so that is really
Was there at one point you
remember
were
playing there.
a pilot, or you had a pilot's license, or interested in flying back then?
Yeah, yeah. I used to have a pilot's license, and that one thing that was interesting is a lot of the other pro players, they also were flying airplanes too. They had the
Did
same
you
kind of.
know, like when you got interested in aviation and got your pilot's license, did you know that, oh, these guys also play? Or, you're sitting there on the runway at Republic Airport and you look up, oh, wait a minute, there's Boris Becker behind that plane.
That's right. That's exactly how I found out
Really?
about them flying airplanes. And yeah, from there I was always looking at the different people there, and I noticed a number of other sport players had private pilot licenses, and they were flying their planes there at the same airport. That was really amazing. A lot of people who are involved in sports at that time, we were all flying airplanes. It was really, really
I
interesting.
wonder why that is, because I always think about the psychology of that. Somebody who plays tennis, so you got to think of the strategy as you play and have have the confidence. And it would kind of be the same thing in flying a plane. Not anybody's going to get in the cockpit of a plane and just take off. And it takes not everybody can do that. It takes a special person. I wonder if there's a connection between tennis and flying a plane.
Maybe it is. Maybe there is something about sport players interested in doing something adventurous and
Maybe.
flying an airplane. I think originally the thing with the flying airplane came about with a career decision of maybe going into the aviation field, and I think originally they thought I could maybe work in the luggage logistics areas, and then since I turned out to be an excellent pilot, I was able to really progress and get my pilot license. So I was there with the other sport players and flying airplanes at Republic Airport was really the main airport I was flying out of in Farmingdale, New York, and that is was really interesting. And at the time, yeah, I think there is obviously a definite thing of sport players flying those airplanes. Yes, and maybe it's really very adventurous, and I think it's also a trend because really aviation was really coming up at that time. People were just starting to fly airplanes and things like that, and it was pretty good.
How did your tennis career as a tennis pro wrap up? So you started at 13, you were playing professionally when you were in your early 20s. Where did it kind of transition off and why was that?
It started really when I was 9 years old. I had a contract and was issued a yearly income, and then it progressed where I started to play the junior pro ATP, then played the adult ATP, and it sort of ended around 91. I think my advertising and my playing over there, they were promoting me over there. They made Monotron of myself over in Indonesia. And I think that whole effort over there in Indonesia lasted longer. I heard it lasted maybe till the year 1994. That the whole advertising campaign. That's when I was on a billboard over there. And so they had all kinds of things going on. So I was very well known there.
So you had a good run. Was it that the contracts weren't renewed for your tennis career? How did that all end?
I think what the simple thing was, and I think the problem was because they had those big holdbacks, but I think the very simple thing was something with really having like basic organization to continue playing. I think one thing my sponsors, the previous sponsors called me on the phone and they had pointed out the same thing about why they didn't get me like another tennis center. Obviously for that much money you could build a whole tennis center and things like that. I think so. So even though I'm a player, I could play great and everything, I wasn't the only person involved with that whole tennis
Sure,
effort.
sure.
And and then the whole thing with them going on a world scale with Mototron, and so that whole thing was beyond my control. I think they used to ask me questions about playing, and then with the Ross Perot team, I noticed what they had told me about how they have different players and they're very worldly in the different parts of the world with spokesmen and people like that, which was a whole different game to play. And I thought about the maybe being like Perot team, that we would all play as part of a team. That might help them putting a hold on just one player. It would be more difficult. You put a hold on 5 players at the same time, could be more difficult. So I think that's what I was envisioning because they used to ask me my opinion about things like that, and so I think that's where that was ending up. So it was very interesting, and so that whole thing with the Perot company was, I always think about it more like Perot team, so they
You would think, and
somehow
now
they
you're
they
saying it, I remember he played tennis. He was a
yes,
big tennis player.
that's correct, yes,
Hmm.
and so that's really what happened, and I don't know, I think you think about the past of same thing of how to continue playing and everything. I think there was some continuing of playing. Things had cleared in 1996, and I received a phone call from Dunlop. Dunlop called me and they told me that they are gonna back my playing. They get I could use them as a sponsor, use their name, and that they wanted to see me, back winning more games. And this was a couple years after like '94. So this is so they did call me, and but I had asked about the whole structure of playing the tennis, and I think a lot of it had to do with just basic organizations of having tennis center, tennis coaches, things like that. And I don't know what the story is because I'm just one player. I really
Sure.
cannot do the whole thing on my own. That's really what happened.
Just an amazing career, even in the beginning, that turned into an architectural career, and you're still going strong in the New York area. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, let's say they want to do a renovation or fresh construction, they just go to your website?
Yes, of course. You can go to my website, www.johnriggio.com, and you can look at my contact information and give me a call and send an email. And of course, I can work on your project. I think as far as the tennis and things, I have all kinds of things on YouTube now. You can go onto YouTube. You can see my podcasts for architecture work. And also you could look for my podcasts. I even have them on my tennis history. And if you're interested to watch those, you can get an idea of my tennis playing. I have some Tony Roach videos on there showing me at the big tournament and things like that. And so that is pretty good.
One of these days, we got to play tennis. The only thing is, I don't want any video of that because you're going to see the ball go like past me.
I think like around 96, even though Dunlop had given me a phone call that I'm sponsored by them again, things went a little dormant with the tennis. And it slowly has come back up again where I'm playing tennis. And I just started playing at a indoor facility over in Staten Island this last week. So I opened up a new phase now, where I have some
Nice.
indoor tennis in the winter. And so things are still going ahead. They're still expanding.
Good for you.
I've had a number of course, I had the meetup group with about 1,400 people. And we have I've been teaching some tennis too. I've been teaching on a weekly basis.
And here's a guy that can break a racket just by hitting the ball. I can break a racket too. I would be smashing it on the ground because I wouldn't be able to return the ball with you firing it at me. Just an amazing, amazing career. John, great having you on with us. It's John Riggio, RIGGIO.com if you want to learn more about his tennis career, or if you're looking for any kind of architecture work or just want to make changes to your house, even have a question, reach out to this guy. He's amazing. John, thank you so much for being here.
You're
with us.
welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.